Instagram.
We are live.
Perfect. We started right on time.
I know. Let's give everyone a second here to hop in. It says we're live on Instagram, but I don't know.
Okay, perfect. Let me check. We might be live on Instagram. Oh, wait a minute.
All right, just confirmed we are working. It is live on LinkedIn for us.
Okay, perfect.
So we can go ahead and get started,
Yeah.
I guess. This is the first time we've done this. We've never gone live. We've done a ton of videos and recordings and, on our YouTube and Instagram and LinkedIn and, everywhere else, but we've never actually done something live. So definitely excited just for the chance to be here and talk about what's going on in the industry and then at BMAC and just in general. So like I said, we're not used to going live. So we're used to getting do-overs and giggles and all sorts of things in between video takes. So no promises there won't be any of that. But I guess we'll just quickly introduce ourselves to start out. So my name is Taylor Genre. I am the Director of Recruiting and Marketing here at BMAC. I've been here a little over 4 years. So I have a hand in quite a few other departments outside of recruiting and marketing. I work with our training team as well as kind of working with our sales managers for sales training and placing new hires on teams and all that sort of stuff. But Sydney?
Perfect. I'll talk a little loud. We're actually in the same room to make it a little easier, but my name is Sydney Phillips. I'm on more of the digital marketing side of BMAC Logistics. It'll actually be my year in May, so I'm excited for that. But kind of to bounce off Taylor, I'm just excited to go live. And again, a little nerve-wracking because we can't go back and edit this video, but I'm just excited to make it a little bit more collaborative. And if anyone has any questions throughout or whatever, we'll also kind of include that in what we'll talk about today. But to kind of piggyback off of what Taylor said, kind of covering the challenges of working in logistics industry, culture, and careers, diving into the challenges. So Taylor, what challenges come with working in the logistics industry?
Yeah, and first of all, thanks again for everyone who answered the poll and submitted questions and excited to talk about it. And there's a couple of different ways we could have taken this question when asked about the challenges of working in logistics. Obviously, I think the industry as a whole faces different challenges as the market changes and there's uncertainty. And now, everyone's worried about the tariffs. And there's just so much we could talk about just with the industry as a whole. But I took it more as like let's talk about what challenges people have being an employee in the logistics industry, not just at BMAC, but what challenges come with that. And, the kind of first major one that comes to mind for me is, of course, that we work in a 24/7 industry. So, someone who's worked in logistics their whole life is probably used to that, but someone coming in from another industry might not be used to being on call 24/7, getting a customer reaching out to them at 9 p.m. for a load that has to pick up at 5 a.m. or something. So unless you own your own business, that's not the case for most, careers or companies. It's kind of that 24/7 lifestyle. So I think that's a challenge in and of itself. And I think with that produces a challenge of burnout. From being on call 24/7. So, and we'll kind of talk about company culture and things like that in logistics a little bit later. But I think that's part of it is obviously having a way to combat that burnout, having a team that supports you, at work to be able to recharge at some point.
I have a question. So, because I know we kind of mentioned the challenges, in general sales, you're on call 24/7, whether that be logistics, recruiting, staffing, even, product selling, but when it comes to logistics specifically, like, have you seen in this industry like something different that sales people have to do rather than maybe or maybe a day-to-day lifestyle that they do more so in this kind of sales rather than
I think in our industry, something that's a little bit different than sales in other industries is that you really have to take ownership, of your customers and of the people that you're servicing, because no one else is going to answer their call at 10 p.m.
Right.
If they call, that's on you, especially if they're calling your cell phone, you know what I mean? So just really taking ownership, we always say, is very entrepreneurial. But I also don't think that 24/7 accessibility stops at our sales team. We have an after hours team operationally. I think, in other places in logistics, I mean, drivers drive 24/7 outside of their mandatory breaks. They don't have hours that they can, they don't only drive during the day. I think, shipping managers and their shippers and receivers that are open 24/7 as well. So I think that, kind of goes all around, but I think that, and then another challenge, and just in recruiting, I get asked a lot, like, oh, what's one of the hardest things about this job, or what's one reason people like don't make it? And something I always share is that being a 3PL, a third party logistics provider, or any position where you're a third party, like, things get complicated, right? Like when you're doing business, when it's between more than two people, like you're giving up some degree of control. And I think people have a hard time with that. Like, as a broker, for example, you're putting the trust in your carrier that they're going to do what they're supposed to do, get your shipment where it's supposed to go. And you're also putting trust in the customer that that's going to be ready when it said they would, like that the weight's accurate, that you're not sending a truck in there that can't scale it. So just being open and okay with putting all that trust in other people, and, realizing that some things happen, trucks break down, things affect your money, they affect your paycheck, and you have to be able to kind of push through that. So as far as challenges go, those are my kind of two main ones.
Yeah, I was just going to mention too, how you were touching in on, obviously this career, you kind of have to be on call, especially with truckers who, drive through the night sometimes to deliver a load. And I think what's really beneficial, which you can speak more towards because you've been here for longer, is like our after hour teams in Barranquilla, how, we work, Eastern time zone from 8 to 5 and obviously answer calls up until a certain point. But this team, helps benefit in making sure, truckloads run smoothly. So would you say that's definitely been a big part in kind of like giving almost more of a work-life balance and kind of ensuring that, hey, this truckload is going to be delivered on time and the broker can wake up in the morning with, peaceful mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the idea. I think, in a perfect world, yes, I think, although there's still always challenges with that, like, a driver gets a broker's cell phone number from their email signature, so they're not calling the after hours team. They're blowing the broker up at 3 a.m. when they're sleeping. So I do think, yes, in a perfect world, that's ideal, and that's what we want. And the after hours team is there for that support to give people back some more of their free time. But at the end of the day, there's only so much we can do to mitigate that as well.
Perfect. Yeah. And then kind of branching towards, teamwork and how we kind of come together to work and make sure that, loads are delivered on time, but also making sure we as the internal team collaborate. What would you say, or what do you look for in a good company culture, I guess? What does that really mean in general, and then to you? Yeah,
so that was, again, another question we received. People wanted us to kind of touch on company culture, and not just necessarily here, but in the industry, and kind of just perspective from a recruiter, right, on what looking for a good company culture is. And I would say, like, something we want to do kind of with this and in this conversation is maybe break some of those like stereotypes that come with like logistics and freight brokerages. Like, and I think one of those things is that, you see all these logistics companies that post all the stuff on their social media, and it's all like the kegs in the fridge in their, company kitchen, or the pool tables and the ping pong tables and all the fun stuff. And it's like, not like we don't have some of that. We don't have alcohol in our offices, but we do, like, we have an office with a pool table. We have an office with a golf simulator. Like, we do have those things. But if you notice, it's really not something that we push at all on our social media, because like that truly is not like company culture. Like that's like the fun stuff. Sure. And I think, I think people kind of know their market when they're advertising that kind of stuff. I think they're more so targeting people who are maybe fresh out of college, and things like that. Whereas we will hire fresh out of college, but, more so we prefer people who have done maybe sales in another industry or something. So while those things are, great and can add to, mitigating some of that burnout or giving someone something to do for a minute to walk away from their desk, I don't really think that's what defines company culture. I think it's more of your environment and the people that are around you. I recently went to, I'm a member of a group called Executive Human Resources Women's Network. I think I got EHRWN. Yeah. And I recently went to a seminar just like 2 weeks ago, and it was about relational leadership and how we can increase retaining employees and things like that. And a big part of it was like, when an employee signs, a contract or an offer letter, like, we're in Pennsylvania, it's an at-will state. But there is to some degree, some sort of promise being made by the employer. And the employer is essentially promising to provide a safe environment for that person to work in, and the employee is essentially promising to do the job that they're being hired to do. And a lot of people think work environment means the physical environment, but it's very important to also consider like the psychological environment that you're creating for someone. Are they supported? Are they keeping things in when they have struggles? Do they, not know who to talk to? Do they feel, are they feeling okay and happy to be at work? So I think that's a big thing, just the environment in itself and the people around you, the team around you. Do you feel, like with your manager that you have clear expectations and goals outlined by them? Do you have a team around you that, if you have a question, you can, go to them? Is there kind of an open door policy with management and people that you might need to work with and collaborate with? And do you feel, like your opinion and your voice is heard? So I think those are all things that really, really better describe culture versus, let's all drink a beer at our desk at 4 p.m.
I like, because like there's a separation. There's the fun, the tangible fun where it's like, oh, we can go play ping pong or do some golf in the kitchen, whatever it may be. But I agree what you were saying. Culture is more the psychological, almost like emotional kind of standpoint. When you walk into the office, you want to go to work to kind of not like
do you pull in and sit in the parking lot? Like, please don't make me go in here.
Right, exactly.
Like, you're not in a good culture.
Right.
That's what you're doing.
The goal that we want. And I think it's just at the end of the day, really establishing teamwork, really hearing what your employees, have to say. So I do think it's a lot more intangible needs, bouncing off that. On top of too, like, especially in this company, again, I see this in other logistics companies, even any other industry, but how if you're in a sales team, for example, we celebrate the fully commissionables who roll out. So I think that's very special, giving those people, obviously the tangible party, everyone coming and gathering, but also that gratification and almost award to let them know that they're seen, they're heard, they're appreciated for the work and effort they put in. So I think, mixing both of them is never a bad thing. So that's what I really like about this company.
Yeah, definitely. I think, if anyone could pick, they'd love to work somewhere where there was a, free beer in the kitchen all day or something. Especially, I mean, it's 70 degrees in Pittsburgh, for the first kind of spring week here. We all want to be drinking a margarita outside.
Right,
but
exactly.
Here we are on LinkedIn Live with all of you instead.
But to kind of change gears, I mean, we're still in the logistics industry, and it's definitely more male dominated for sure. And the next question, since, it was International Women's Day, March 8th. It's more so Women's History Month this month. So for you, Taylor, what is it like being a woman in a male-dominated industry or environment? Maybe your personal take or just in general, what you've been seeing?
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting question, because I feel like anytime it's brought up, like, oh, it's such like a male-dominated industry, and it's, a career for men and things like that. When you get to like talk about what it's like being a woman in that industry, like a lot of the time I feel like that always comes across as like, let's shit on all the men. Right. And like, that's like not what I want this to be or what this is about at all. I actually think, I really want to kind of draw the attention to quite the opposite. And again, kind of break one of those stigmas that's kind of just around logistics and freight brokerage. And, you always hear the joke like, oh, it's like just a big frat party or, whatever, or something like when you talk about different just kind of brokerage offices. And I think some of that comes from the cultural fun things that logistics offices typically have. But I very much don't feel like that. I've never felt like that at work. I've been to all 4 of our offices, and I would say like we work with some really great professional men who work very hard and take their jobs very seriously. And like at the same time, like going the opposite direction, I'd say like it's the opposite of a frat party. Like we work with like some gentlemen. Like I don't ever have to open a door for myself if I don't want to. Like I never have to carry a box up from my car. When I was pregnant, I was one of 2 women sitting in here with 25 men. And I started crying because they discontinued the flavor of Doritos that I wanted. Probably hadn't had them for like 3 years, but of course, randomly, I was like, I need these Doritos. So I'm bawling my eyes out in the middle of the office with all these men, and they're probably like, what is going on? But at least three different people went and looked for them for me on their lunch break. And I was brought 3 other bags of chips instead. Yeah. So it's just quite the opposite. I think we work with a great group of guys. I really do. I agree. I think it has its challenges just in the sense of, trying to combat that as a recruiter. I think I feel the weight on my shoulders to some degree of, needing to build a more diverse workforce in terms of gender and wanting to bring in more women. And it's hard. When you look at the statistics, only about 35% of the logistics and freight brokerage industry is women, which has gone up, in the last several years. And then when you look at sales too, which we're primarily a sales organization, only 31% of people who work in sales are women. So that's even smaller than logistics. However, women actually perform better in sales than men do. 86%, and I have no notes. I memorized these earlier, just so you know. 86% of women hit their quotas, while that number is only like in the high 70s for men. Yeah. So it's just kind of interesting to think about. But obviously working against the lower amount of women in logistics and the lower amount of women in sales, it is hard, and that is a challenge to kind of change that. But it's something that I'm actively working towards and for. And I want the message to women just to be like, don't let something like that, or thinking, oh, this is more of like a man's industry, stop you from applying to a job ever, because that's just simply not the case.
Exactly.
Anywhere.
To bounce off of Jacob Langford in the comments, doesn't matter if you're a guy or girl, we work with a great company, great people. Bounce off that. I agree completely.
Oh my gosh, there's 12 comments. I haven't seen any of these.
To bounce off of Jacob's, I was just going to say, even in my experience, like I've been in multiple different industries, whether that be like majority women, majority men. And I think at the end of the day, it's just all about what you bring to the table, your work ethic, your personality, how you fit into your environment, and you will be treated with that respect. So in general, I think it is a great balance. You will not feel left out or like isolated. It's very welcoming, very mature, and I personally really appreciate you. I will say I was a tad fearful at first. I did look at the statistics, but joining this company and being around everyone and really getting to know everyone, I think that eliminated any fears I had in general. So I completely agree. It's a lot deeper than just male versus female. It's just more so what characteristics you bring to the table. And at the end of the day, anyone can be good at sales. You just have to put in that effort.
Absolutely. And I think some people are encouraged and empowered by that, right? Being a woman in more of a kind of male dominant type environment. And some people will shy away from that. And that's okay. I think it's not for everyone, but absolutely don't think it should ever, stop anyone from going after what they want.
Exactly. And speaking of careers at BMAC, what kind of career opportunities are there in logistics industry? I know in general, a company needs every kind of, but just dive in specifically, maybe more so in general, and then specifically BMAC.
Yeah, definitely want to talk about, obviously, positions we have open here while we, have this platform. Why wouldn't we share that? But also just the industry, as a whole, right? It's a huge, huge industry. And it's only expected to continue to grow even more over the next 10 years. And we were talking, Sydney and I, kind of in preparation for this call, we're just kind of chatting yesterday, and we talked to Omar, who is one of our brokers in our Beaver office. Hopefully he's watching. He didn't know he was getting a shout out. And he had said that so many people, are saying like, oh, the trucking industry is dying or things like that.
Right.
And, he was like, that's just kind of not true. And it's really not. That's not the case at all. There will never, just the way we consume, just as humans,
we're always going to need, the supply and demand center.
Yeah. There's no way around it. It's not going anywhere. I think it changes and it evolves, and, not just like the market, but the integration of new technology and things like that. Like the industry is kind of ever evolving, but definitely not going anywhere. So I think all that does really is open doors to other sides of the industry that, people can work on. Obviously here, as I mentioned, we're primarily a sales heavy organization. So, right now that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for people who want to be in that customer facing role, growing a book of business, growing their client base of companies they're going to work with and move freight for in all of our offices. Doesn't mean we don't occasionally have other roles open. We do. For example, like I'm looking for a credit manager right now. So just kind of as things pop up, we have other roles too. But I just always encourage people just to look into the industry in general if they're not in it or curious what it's about, especially when I go to like career fairs and meet with like college students and things like that. Even if they're not interested in sales, like I always say, like I highly recommend looking into the industry, even if it's not here, wherever that may be. Because whatever you're interested in, you can probably do it in the logistics industry. Obviously, there's like the operations piece. There's more of kind of the supply chain and procurement and shipping and warehousing and obviously driving. And I think even just with how much like technology is evolving what we do, I think we're seeing a lot more kind of like tech jobs in logistics with people who are actually kind of doing more of like the software programming and creating and developing and, just tying those together and how they really go hand in hand. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in the industry. And I think that's only going to continue to grow and increase as new things and new technology advancements are made.
Right. And then I wanted to ask too, more specifically about BMAC Logistics. I know we're focusing more towards hiring our sales team, growing in all of our different office locations. But in terms of, let's say there's a potential new hire that's either watching this right now, someone who might not know a lot about logistics, but just watching this in general to learn a little bit more, what specific traits do you tend to look for in someone? Like not necessarily like sales experience, but maybe their personality, right, when you're interviewing them.
Yeah, absolutely. We've definitely hired people without sales experience. Some of those things you just have to kind of have in you as traits and characteristics. And, one of those being, I know we already kind of talked about, looking for someone who is, entrepreneurial, wants to really take ownership of what they're doing. I think that's a big one, whether you're in sales or whether you're in more operations or more like account management, like you're still kind of taking ownership of those accounts that you're working with, those loads that you're moving, things like that. But also I think time management's a huge one. Like, every interview ever you walk into and they're like, can you work in a fast-paced environment? And it's like, you don't know fast-paced until you work in logistics. Right. Yes, like it is like 100% we mean that here. Like things move so quickly here. Your day can change so fast because something can happen that just throws everything off. And so time management for sure. And with that, working in all 4 time zones, obviously. So time management is very important. But with that, I always tell people in an interview that it's very important to, have adaptability in how you like to run and manage your day. Like working in logistics is not the job for someone who likes to come in, have their set schedule of what they do from 8 to 5, clock out and go home, because there are just disruptions.
Yes.
Right. Like trucks catch on fire and you have to like go tell your customer and solve that problem. Instead of what you were planning on working on. Literally anything can happen. We have people who have worked in this industry for 20 years who still say, I learn new things still and I encounter things I haven't encountered before. So those are definitely big ones. Obviously, building relationships, communication skills, all very important in sales or anything where you're people facing, which there aren't many jobs really in freight brokerage where you're not people facing in some capacity, whether that's, customers and shippers or carriers or, even me in recruiting. All I do all day is talk to people. So
right, exactly. I think too, the biggest, when people hear sales, you're like, okay, so you get on the phone, call, they think that the process itself, sure, that's simple, but the mental challenge, I've tried sales before. It's very difficult. So, you bringing up, anything could happen. And you put in all of that hard work, effort, you build that relationship with the customer. But at the end of the day, sometimes your outputs don't meet your inputs. And it's one of those things where you have to develop as a person and understand that not everything is in your control. And I think that's probably one of the hardest challenges being in sales. And I know a lot of people, majority, almost everyone in sales here is so well at keeping their cool, organizing a new truck, communicating with the customer. It's impressive, to say the least. So,
and not to say we're perfect.
Not to say
people get mad. We've heard people yell. We've seen people throw stuff off their desk. It happens.
Hard, but at the end of the day, I think everyone does such a great job, especially in logistics, where once you set that load up, it's really out the door and you just wait and see until it's delivered. So I think everyone's doing a great job. And anyone can do it. I think it's just at the end of the day, you have to challenge yourself to kind of grow with that mentality.
Absolutely. And that's what I tell people all the time. If you can get over that hump of giving up control and being a third party in that situation, I couldn't do it. Absolutely no way. Sales, I could be great at sales. I could, I could handle that side of things, no doubt. But I am such a type A, planner. I need to know what's going on type of person that I couldn't handle not knowing where my freight was. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Just couldn't do that. So, shout out to everyone who does at BMAC and just in the industry. You are a big part of what goes on, just everywhere. It's just logistics it's just really a part of everything in everyday life and how we get everything we have.
And speaking of, diving off into career opportunities, I know this is on live, but to kind of end this LinkedIn Live, here at BMAC, we actually are hosting an open house. So if anyone watching, outside of our company, just interested in learning more in a specific position or just talking to one of us to build your network, we are hosting our open house March 18th in our St. Petersburg and Pittsburgh offices. So that is from 10 a.m. Eastern time to noon Eastern time. So you can contact me, Taylor, Paige Carter, shout out to our other recruiter, Marcella, Anthony, any of us on the BMAC side. And really appreciate everyone in the comments watching. Again, this was our first time, kind of just winged it as a conversation.
Yeah, we came in here with no notes, no nothing. Yes. We were just let's just see what happens.
So if anyone too, we're open to feedback. If anyone wants to, come on the LinkedIn Live, have any ideas on what they want to hear on any specific trends towards more of the logistics market side, we're happy to do that. So let us know.
Absolutely. Please, if there's any topics you want to hear us address, we'd love to do this again. We'd love to make it a regular thing, and we want to make it something that appeals to, people outside of just BMAC. We don't want to sit here and say, BMAC's great, and this is why you should work here. And, obviously I'm the director of recruiting. I want to talk to as many people who want to work here as I can, but that's not the goal of this. We just want to really network and just speak about what you guys are interested in hearing. So thank you so much for joining us today. We know it was lunchtime, so hopefully if you didn't have lunch yet, you guys get to go and enjoy lunch. And I know I've been hangry this whole time, so that's what we're gonna do. But thanks again for joining us. Send us a message if there's anything you want us to talk about next time.
But thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye. Enjoy lunch.